So you mentioned the New York Dolls, and I was listening to your album, your 2020 album, and it's very clearly glam rock influenced. I feel like you wear your influences on your sleeve, which isn't a bad thing. But I hear in the album, I hear a lot of T-Rex, I hear Queen, I hear Bowie.
Keep talking dirty to me.
So, and then I was just going through some of your Facebook page, and it seems like Queen is your number one artist, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that I keep that nice and low key, really. But Queen really is the number one. They're the musical Bible, as far as I'm concerned. I think everything that they did was brilliant, and it's nice now with, I suppose, the success that the film's had and their current tours now, that I can speak about them with more people. We're on high school. I'll try and talk to people about Queen, and for all intents and purposes, they were a dead band in terms of they hadn't done anything. They obviously hadn't released records for ages, and they were the sort of band where your folks would listen to them on the radio and the golden oldies sort of station. So
yeah,
I found that they were really, in a way, something that were only mine growing up that no one else really wanted to know about. But I just think they're brilliant, so I try and bring a lot of what they do into my own recordings with the harmonies and the orchestral arrangements. I'd love to have strings and stuff on my records, but it's just one other expense that already adds up to what's an expensive endeavour to record. So I'm sort of trying to take a leaf out of the Brian May book in terms of having the orchestral arrangements with the guitar. And I've really loved the idea of how far can I take the guitar in terms of creating these, arrangements. I don't know. I think they sound right, but the jury's out.
Do you remember, how old were you when you discovered Queen, or do you remember, was there a song or an album that just lit the spark?
My recollection is always loving them. My parents, to be fair to them, had a great taste in music, so I was aware of them from a very early age. I suppose I probably remember hearing like Bohemian Rhapsody in the car because it'd just be on, on the radio stations as we go along. But I think album-wise, I remember it would be early high school, and I saved up some money from whatever. I think I was working like a chippy or something at the time, and saved up money and bought a night at the opera, and had, I remember putting it on, and this is well before things were Spotify and music being on YouTube, and we could track whole albums. So I was aware of the hits off the record, but I got to sit back and experience the album from start to finish. And I would have been 14 or 15 maybe, and able to take in everything they'd done, and that's such an eclectic album. And that probably sowed the seeds, I think, for a lot of the going, right, that's what I'm going to try and do, albeit perhaps a bit poorly, but or I'm going to try and do it. So I remember at a very young age having this fascination with how can I create, gospel harmonies as myself in the studio, because I record everything myself. But I do remember a mate of mine in high school, his dad had a bunch of recording equipment, an old analog tape reel, sort of reel to reel. And we used to record tracks on there, that bits that I were writing, and he would drum across them. And I remember saying, let's build all these harmonies on it, but it was only a 4-track tape. And then we worked out that, and this is the, when you're young and full of energy and excitement to get things on, we worked out that if we fed it through the speakers to play it, with a microphone in front and ran it back to another set of speakers, we could kind of bounce them down onto one track. So, you know, we were multi-layering this reel to reel. I mean, I wouldn't have the energy to think about doing it now.
Now that everything's digital, you don't have to worry about that anymore. But
exactly, but it was you know, that interesting idea of, you know, how in a bedroom as well, mind you, you know, how can we play speakers and amps and sort of daisy chain them all up so we could keep. I mean, we must have bounced the audio down hundreds of times. I'm sure in the end it all sounded quite, you know, quite still and quite bad, but somewhere in my vault, I have the recordings.
But there's something romantic about that, right? Like experimenting with your sound and trying to figure out how to make things sound like you've got the money to make them sound the way you want.
That was my favorite part of Bohemian Rhapsody, when they showed him in the studio swinging the microphone in front of the amps and really getting creative with the engineering part of the music business.
I do feel that part is lost for musicians now, because, you know, so many, you know, when I was growing up anyway, you know, the technology of home recording was really just kind of becoming at a level, I suppose, that you could look into it. You know, where now you can have a laptop and directly plug your guitar straight into it and have any amplification sound that you want in the world. I remember trying to mic up, you know, those little like bad beginner practice sounds you get when you start, you know, trying to mic them up and distort the settings and, you know, try and mic in different ways to get different sounds. So you're right, there's something that was romantic about the whole finding your feet, you know, and trying to find my sound within, as a guitarist and a bass player and a singer. Maybe they don't have now, maybe it's too easy. Or perhaps I've finally hit that age where, you know, it was different in my day.
No, I agree with you. With them making everything easy, I think we also got a little lazy.
I think
you know what I mean?
It's funny in a way. I mean, I think the technology growth is brilliant, you know, but it's also it's too easy sometimes, you know. I've been in the studio and they've just said, "Oh, we can fix this one note that I've hit wrong in the solo." So the rest of it's fine, and you play one note and they just kind of drop it in somewhere, and it's in 3 clicks of a button. Sometimes it seems too. Sometimes it does seem a bit too easy.
Yeah.
I always liked. Like growing up listening to those live albums from the 70s, I always liked hearing the mistakes. I thought that's what made it so interesting, and it reinforced like, oh yeah, this is live.
Yeah.
Like things can go wrong, and how do you carry on from it?
You know, and I say to people, some nights I'll go for a certain note and I'll hit it, and other nights I'll woefully, you know, misjudge it. But that's the art of playing live, is you never quite know exactly what you're going to do, you know, even when you play night after night. So I think, you know, you're right, hearing it live and hearing the mistakes. I mean, at the end of the day, music is... it's not necessarily about perfection. I don't know. That's always been my excuse for never becoming, you know, learning music. I've always been a big believer that musicians can be overtrained and too far into perfection. You know, I know some technically brilliant guitarists who just don't have any feel to their playing anymore.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to know what you're doing, but I think there's a fine line between knowing too much.
Yes. Yeah. And I think when you're technically almost perfect, it takes a lot of the heart and soul out of the music.
Yeah, you're pretty much a robot at that point.
Yeah.
But like at the end of the tour, if you're still doing what you're doing at the beginning of the tour, then, I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You got to mix it up a little bit. And you can see a lot of, if it's a good band and they have a good chemistry, you can tell right away that anything can happen.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Like I've seen every time I've seen the Stones